I am so glad that Carol Kosovar and Christy Pitchell are the actual people who are facilitating and leading this. It's kind of everyone to have me greet you, and that's really all I'm doing, is just to say thank you very much for coming and being part of this. The diversity in this room at every level is just warms my heart greatly. This is the kind of broad conversation, inclusive conversation that we should have. And I look forward to it very much. It is actually my pleasure to introduce a person who is one of those positive, bouncy, well-loved people in our landscape. And I think part of why we are all here today, it's because of the optimistic and inclusive leadership at the CTA of Dean Vogel.
I think the very first thing that has to be said is thank you from everybody, not only in this room, but anybody that's really interested in making things better for kids in classrooms, because Molly has dedicated so much of her time bringing folks like us together, and that's a really big deal when you think about it. I mean, I think most of the people in the room did what I did when you saw the list of who's here or who's coming. And the very first thought I had was the same thought I had when Tom Torlakson brought together this Education Excellence Task Force, the group that actually produced the Greatness by Design report. I looked at the group and I thought to myself, how in the hell are we ever going to get anything done? All we do is argue with one another. I thought the same thing when I looked at this group. You know, when you think about it, the diversity of opinion about where education policy should land is really represented in this room. One of the gifts that we've found over the last few years, specifically in California, but starting to learn across the country, is that diversity of opinion or differences of opinion actually builds strength if you can find the resolve to put the critical issues on the table and let the politics sit over here. Because ultimately what we're trying to do, and I guarantee you, if you are in this room, somewhere in your most private moments you've said this to yourself: I want to do everything I can to build and sustain positive learning environments for kids, period. And when you think about kids, you're thinking preschool through graduate school, when it gets right down to it. And so that's the opportunity that we have when we bring people like us into the same room and focus on the pedagogy. What we can build together is so much more powerful and so much more stronger than what we build alone. And we found that in the California Teachers Association by asking ourselves a fundamental question 10 or 12 years ago when Eric and Mickey and I sat together trying to figure out what we were going to do if we were able to sustain this leadership over 12 years. And we asked this question: suppose I don't want to be in the union, I don't want to be a building rep, I don't want to be elected president. Look, all I want is I want to be the best third grade teacher I can be, and I want to help my colleagues improve their practice. Does my voice count? And we all said absolutely, absolutely, because the focus of the work of all of us in the organizations we represent is the classroom. And I mean, it is kind of interesting when we bring all of the key policy players, and that's who we are, into a room, that we've got 2 or 3 teachers or practitioners. All the rest of us are the folks that sit outside of that classroom and try to anticipate, based on research and other things, oftentimes innuendo, what's best for kids. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be here, because I get to introduce somebody who has basically challenged the rest of us to focus on classrooms and kids. Somebody who says almost every single time he speaks, the voice of the classroom teacher matters. If we want to get things right for kids, we got to get things right for teachers. And we got to appreciate not only the diversity of teachers in all the various ways that we can imagine, not only diversity of ethnicity or diversity of demographics or diversity of education or diversity of interest, but also diversity of opinion. And Tom Torlakson, starting with the Blueprint in Education, which came to us like weeks after he was inaugurated in his first term, and then the Greatness by Design report, which laid out a plan to get to where we want to get to, has demonstrated not only with his voice but with his behavior that he's a champion for us and he's a champion for kids. So I will tell you, I am incredibly proud and I feel privileged to bring up our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Torlakson.
It is a great day. When I looked at the list, too, I was amazed, pleased, and glad that Molly's providing this leadership again. And thank you, Christy and Carol, for being part of this leadership team, and Dean, for your tireless work and creative work and partnering kind of work, and for that kind of introduction. So I was told also by Molly that you guys were all revved up, so I did my run along the river. You've heard this before, and I've had 3 cups of coffee already, so I have my endorphins and caffeine kicking in, trying to rise to the occasion of this convening. And truly saying welcome and truly saying thank you to all of you from the places you come and the passion you bring and the skills you bring to helping all of our children succeed. And to Molly for being that convener, that leader, that teaming type person. And the results of the water cooler, again, the idea of let's have some conversations, a safe place to share ideas and differences and look for win-win and work things out. And so that work for early learning was tremendously successful and important and took a system that was somewhat fractured, isn't all totally unified yet today, but the child care providers and the preschool providers and other early learning advocates came together over the water cooler for several years. And the result, we worked with the governor and the state board. We got Race to the Top early learning, $75 million. We got the QRIS, a quality rating system for our schools. So we've come a long way there, and we know we have a lot of miles to travel together in the K-12 arena. So this is a welcome opportunity. And just to say at the outset, I support strongly the 3 pillars, and you probably all have this, but I'm going to just enumerate them because I think they're important the way they sum up our goals and what brings us together and our purpose. One is to support and recruit outstanding teachers and education leaders. And as Dean said, many of you in this room helped us hammer out the Blueprint for Great Schools, which we're now also, by the way, several of you in this room are helping with version 2 of the Blueprint for Great Schools. And this was the springboard for Greatness by Design. And we'll talk a little bit more. I'll have the privilege of introducing Michael Fullen, but that capacity-building concept, the continuous improvement, and having for our classified employees, our teachers, having for our principals and administrators and school board members, continuous education and learning and figuring out ways to work together. So that is a key pillar, a key goal. It's at the top of my list as superintendent for the Department of Education, what we do with the 1,100 school districts in the state. And then the new approach to accountability and learning. You have some guiding documents here, and you'll be digging deep into that. But it's an exciting time. We're working diligently with Mike Kirst and the State Board of Education, Karen Staff Walters, Linda Darling-Hammond, David Rattray, and we've been working, Rich Zeiger's been part of that team. We've been working on a new accountability system, so you'll hear a lot more about it. Instead of 2 digits, 2 numbers to define success of students or teachers or schools, a multidimensional approach, redoing an API that really sets the right targets that we can all aim at together. That's a really important approach. And the third pillar is strengthen and increase school finances and financing and resources, and that's something we're going to do. I'm, again, that optimist. Remember all through we were out there, we worked together and we convinced the voters of California it was worth investing in schools, and great things are happening despite the budget cuts and some of the emergencies we faced. Remember 4 years ago? I declared a state of financial emergency because we were in dire straits with 30,000 teachers laid off, 20,000 classified, and uncertainty and chaos in terms of bumping and faculties not being able to stay together as much as they wished they could. So many good things are happening. I'll just share, coming back late last night, I came back from Washington, had a couple of good meetings with our congressional delegation, actually met with 6 members of Congress. They were not aware of the progress we've made on things like the collaborative and what we're doing with the local, the LCAPs and accountability formula. We had the chance to meet with Lamar Alexander, Senator Alexander, and I just wanted to give a brief report card from that 4-day trip that there is a glimmer of hope still that we can get a new ESEA and leave behind No Child Left Behind. Let's get rid of that one, right? It's universal among Democrats and Republicans, really, that system is broken. We also met with Congressman Klein, and by the way, both leaders of education, the majority leaders now in Congress, talked about early learning. And I was with 30 other superintendents from other parts of the nation, and rural, urban, Republican, Democrat, early learning kept coming up. Investing in early learning as a top priority topic that needs to get addressed. If hopefully some in the ESEA, but if not, soon after a new ESEA. We did have a chance to meet for an hour, extraordinary experience with President Obama. And he sat down and shared some stories. He just came from a science fair. And these 5th graders amazed him. And he told 2 stories. One, this young girl had invented a contraption that turned pages in books. And the president, watched this machine, this contraption work, and it's going so fast, he says, I can hardly keep up with it. And the young girl said, well, Mr. President, this is just a prototype. I'm going to design something even better. And then he had another girl who, and I don't understand it all, and he didn't seem to understand it all, but she did a bunch of algorithms on some antibodies growth, kind of chemistry, biochemistry kind of thing that would help cure cancer, and it actually has some sensibility. And so he was saying, you know what, we have great kids from everywhere in this great nation. And so we had a good conversation, and he's also determined to help break the logjam in Congress over a new ESEA. So coming back, I'm more optimistic than when I left, that there's a focus on that. The other thing I'll report again is in meeting with superintendents from around the country, that they're somewhat stunned and amazed at what's going on in California. And we are one of the few no waiver states, because we tried to do a clean waiver, as you remember, a straight waiver, and we're rebuffed at that. But when they look at what we did with Prop 30, they're amazed. How could you get the public to tax themselves to invest in schools? And it's rather simple, of course. We just shared good things that are happening. Stories like those stories that the president encountered. Students that are excelling, engaged, bright minds that are wanting to be stimulated and challenged. Our new academic standards, our new testing, new accountability, local control funding formula, LCAPs. When they heard about the collaborative, again, which I'll talk a little bit more about when I introduce Michael, the idea that we will create an agency, a new state agency, which just got off the ground about 3 weeks ago. We had our convening first meeting. 5 individuals representing the breadth of the state to look at being a helping hand, help districts when they're not able to meet their local accountability goals, or when they just need help. They want a good PAR program, they want a good induction program, or they want a good English learners program, that they will have a chance to have help from the collaborative, a helping hand rather than a slapping hand. So that again is really positive. I'm going away, by the way, less talking about Common Core, and the rest of the nation sort of wonders, how is California getting along implementing Common Core so smoothly compared to other places. But again, we said it's good for kids, and business and college community said it's the kind of training and skills we want for our students going forward. What I am referring to more, though, and trying to drop from my vocabulary, Common Core, even though it's not as controversial a term here as it is in other states, is there are standards. We are working on new, rigorous California standards, our new state standards. World class, they're ours. They didn't come from on high. It's not Obama Ed or Fed Ed. It's something that we were involved in creating and adopting. And by talking about the new state standards, we can also include, I'm looking out there to the science guys, the new next generation science standards, and the new English language development standards, and soon social studies standards to have worked out. So again, I was proud of that work, and of course we underscored what we're here for today, because we know that there's so much more work to do. Also, we met with the White House staff who's been watching what we're doing, investing in career tech education, over $1 billion when you take this year's budget into account, seeing students learning with a purpose, motivated, graduation rates, 95% in those programs. We just put out $250 million. We have great partnerships now with K-12, community colleges, higher ed, and those are working really well. We had 1,500 businesses step up and say, we'll provide internships and mentorships in these unique partnerships for our kids. They also like what we're doing on No Child Left Offline. And again, that took some work together to unite and say we are serious about implementing these standards, but we know that the heart of making that happen well is making sure that we have trained professionals, the teachers and classified that work with students, that they are there and well equipped, and that they have the bandwidth and they have the internet connecting devices. So that $1.5 billion we already have, we're down to only 900 students out of 3.2 million. Only 900 students will be taking a paper and pencil test because of geographic access issues. The $27 million that the legislator gave us last year, we deployed in 227 sites, bringing internet connectivity to those areas and helping get the last mile in. And now we have another $100 million proposed in this year's budget to continue that. So again, we're investing together. A thank you as I transition to my introduction to Michael. We are working together in a really positive way and getting positive results. We're out of the crisis, but we're still not satisfied where we are because too many children aren't getting all the resources they need and all the support they need. And so your third pillar about finances is really important, and I'm strongly, strongly out there advocating everywhere I go to business groups and parent groups, community groups, that we must re-up on a Prop 30. Prop 30 will end. It was a temporary tax, but there's something new that has to come after it that's of equal magnitude, if not greater magnitude. Because California should be, with our high hopes and high expectations and great creativity, we should be at the very top of the nation and go back to that number one spot that we had in the past for our kids. Finally, just a couple of the ideas on the collaboration. I'll do a plug for one of those efforts. Because we in California, this is different in other states, I listened to other superintendents talking about their union, teacher unions, sort of like it's a combat situation, it's a war situation. And here we said teachers are, the voice of teachers and classified classroom aides and other employees is so important to be at the table working together. And that's what this water cooler will further do. Because we've included teachers, we're making steps together that other states are only, imagining that might be possible. They're so bogged down in somewhat of a war with their teachers' unions and other teacher representatives. Just one example of collaboration that came out of the kind of thinking that the water cooler has done in the past and the Blueprint for Great Schools has done. We have a labor management initiative. We have a symposium. We thought maybe 10 districts would apply to be part of this. This is top union leaders, of course, Dean Vogel and Josh Pestall, but Chris Steinhauser's right there. Superintendent Sue from ABC District is there. Bechtel, thank you. Stewart, thank you. Because this convening has led to how do we get to win-win in bargaining and other issues? How do we look at each other's capacity and join together for synergy and better results? And so we have 90 districts have signed up. We were overwhelmed with the response. But again, it's about collaboration and teamwork. We ready to do this? Team up again? What is TEAM? How do you spell it? What's it stand for? TEAM. Together, everyone accomplishes more. You've heard me say this once or twice. So you know that, Molly. That was a quiz. Our homework is to go convince Californians that we are doing great things and then to find the resources so we will do even greater things. Michael Fulton. We went back in October in 2012. We visited Ontario. And the Stewart Foundation, again, Christy, thank you. And we said we want to see what's going on what's happening that's so magical. How is it that the school districts in Ontario are working so well with the central bureaucracy of education, their equivalent Department of Education in Toronto? And it's due to the work of Michael, author. You may have read some of his books. The Professional Capital is his idea of capacity building, his idea of continuous learning but teaming up. And that idea we brought back and discussed with many of you in this room. And then we went to the legislature and we said, as we're bringing about a new funding formula, focusing on English learners and kids from poverty and foster kids, how do we hold accountable and how do we help districts get to their goals? And so the idea of the collaborative was born out of that. And again, it just launched a couple of weeks ago. But it was Michael's creativity and on those trips, a couple of different trips, and then Michael coming out to California. Glenn Price, now my interim chief of staff, was part of that. Dean Vogel, you were part of that. Josh Pechtel. Tony Smith, remember Tony, from Oakland, was very much a part of that. Howard Levine from the School of Education. But we all became inspired by some of Michael's ideals and approach to making things work and having great teams. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Michael Folan, great leader, great thought, visionary, and great educator.